In tonight's episode, we meet this shadowy figure that elderly Elizabeth has become. We decode this whole scene. We talk about the bombing of New York and explain all the links between them. We rescue Elizabeth, and in doing so, discuss the fact that Comstock essentially seems to kind of step aside and let us rescue her. And we also start to pick apart the ending to Bioshock Infinite. And in this particular episode, we will be discussing that scene with the infinite lighthouses, talking about what they all mean, discussing if it's a literal or a symbolic scene, and putting it all together. This is Bioshock Infinite Explained, Part 24. Well, greetings and welcome to Bioshock Infinite Explained, Part 24. We are approaching our quarter century, which I think is pretty exciting, and thank you so much if you have stuck with the series all the way so far. We have just unlocked the Warden's switch, and we are coming down to try and rescue Elizabeth, but first we have a little meeting with the Lutesses.
What is it? Why do you ask what?
When the delicious question is when.
Lives, lived, will live.
Dies, died, will die.
Now there's a bit of a clue as to the fact that we haven't necessarily changed location, but we have changed time. Elizabeth's power seems to have expanded beyond simply moving people around in terms of location and universe, but actually moving people through time as well, which is an interesting conversation I was having with one of you guys on one of the earlier videos, that Elizabeth's powers seem to expand as the game goes on.
Lunatics are running the asylum. They don't even listen to me anymore. All I can do is watch as what I set into motion slides into its terminal stage. It took all I had left in me just to bring you here.
Elizabeth, I don't understand. I heard you screaming. I was coming to get you. Are we...
Here. Take my hand.
So as we can hear from the voice, this is the Elizabeth we left, but a long time later. And she is now an old lady.
The seed of the prophet shall sit the throne, and drown in flame the mountains of man. Say what you will about Comstock. He was a hell of a fortune teller. Wasn't the torture that broke me. Wasn't the indoctrination. It was time. Time rots everything, Booker. Even hope.
I was coming.
Songbird. He always stops you.
Yes, but I would find a way.
No. It's too late for me. I brought you here for your sake. Yours and hers. Here.
So loads to talk about in that particular bit of interaction, but let's take the card and discuss it as we travel through the next sections of the game. But a lovely vista to soak in before we move on.
What is this?
It's for her. She'll know how to read it.
What does it say?
It's advice.
Advice on what?
How not to become me.
So, we have loads and loads to talk about from that particular interaction. As always, when dialogue from the main characters starts, I will pause as we kind of dissect what we have just seen. Before I start on that, though, I just want to apologise for the delay in getting this video out. I've had a bit of a nasty sore throat this week, so I've only done very short videos, little mini tutorials this week, so I've been saving my voice up so I could share this bit of Bioshock Explained with you today.
1912. Before she... There's still time.
So, we have travelled through time, and then we have travelled back through time. It is elderly Elizabeth that has moved us around. as we saw from the voxophones last week.
If she gets ornery, just hit her with the machines. She opens one tear and there will be nothing but regrets.
Mr. Comstock. And these horrible, horrible doctors.
Comstock! What are you doing to her? Let her be!
Mr. Durant, what's the expression? Day late to the dollar short.
It's time to free Elizabeth. This particular section, I think, does a wonderful, wonderful job of really making
Maybe if I shut down those machines from upstairs.
us hate these doctors. All the vox phones we've heard, all the screaming we've heard of the torture of Elizabeth, really makes us want to get our teeth, or more likely our gun, into these guys.
Something to quiet her down. Well, the prophet says half the procedure is the fame. When the body cries out, the spirit listens. Do you hear that screaming, DeWitt? That is the sound of your interference. You have led my daughter into temptation.
She is not your daughter!
Perhaps not now, but trust me when I tell you she will be.
So, combining what we're seeing today with what we heard in our last video, part 23, the process that Elizabeth is going through here is designed to stop her using her powers, to stop her being able to open the tears, and also to indoctrinate her to be the next Comstock. The process is completely successful, which is why Elizabeth isn't able to open any tears to bring us to her, and it's only when old Elizabeth, many years in the future, actually destroys the siphon in her version of the future, that she is able to use her powers again, although she says that it's very painful and it wears her down, and it's, you know, she's got real kind of, you know, it hurts her very much to do so, but she does, and she brings us to the future, gives us a bit of wisdom, and then sends us back to the past to rescue Elizabeth here. And she also clues us into why last video we were discussing, as I remove this man's head from his body, last week we were discussing well, why doesn't Booker actually rescue Elizabeth in the past? Does this time travel thing actually kind of stop her from doing it? And she actually answers that question for us in that bit of dialogue. She says Songbird always stops you. So we do try, or we did try in that kind of other unit, in the past we did try, but we always fail. So in effect, she's actually saving our lives by bringing us to the future and moving us around in terms of realities and stuff. So this old Elizabeth kind of comes to the conclusion that this is the only possible
If we don't sedate her, he shuts down the other one. We're not sedating her.
solution or way to kind of free herself is to bring us to the future, give us some support, and then kind of teleport us directly into Comstock House, potentially where Songbird can't get us until later. But she also gives us that bit of paper. Why it's in code, I have no idea, but she gives us a bit of paper in code that actually lets us control Songbird, as you should be aware from later in the game. As I try and take on a Patriot face first. I should probably be using electric here, but his health seems to be going down. Oh, ow, no, that was possibly an overuse of ammo there. Oh, and I've got one on my left. Ow, ow, ow. I think I'm in a little bit of trouble. I am surrounded and I'm going to die. Yes, I did. Okay, so that completes my tutorial on how not to play Bioshock Infinite. Let's try that again.
For the glory of Columbia.
Now, in the future, Elizabeth also shows us the completion of the prophecy that we have seen throughout the whole game. The seed of the prophet shall sit on the throne and drown in flames the mountains of man. The seed of the prophet, which is obviously a horrible phrase that some of you have objected to in the comment section, is more or less Elizabeth and Anna. She then, thanks to what's been taking place in this institution here, she takes over from Comstock. She carries on his his works, and she drowns in flames the skyscrapers of man in New York in the future. So the prophecy comes true through her. Now, in the previous video, we listened to lots of Vox phones talking about how they were going to indoctrinate Elizabeth, how they were going to persuade her to stop being herself and actually become, the creature she becomes. And they were talking about whether it was through pain or through propaganda or through lack of hope. And Elizabeth says in that last little scene there, it was none of those. It was simply just the passage of time, the length of time that she was trapped there, the years and years that she was there, eventually led to her changing her kind of outlook on life and falling in line with what Comstock wanted. But for now, let's enjoy the demise of these little scientists. It's a twister! It's a twister! No. No. You die.
Elizabeth, I'll be right there!
Which makes older Elizabeth a bit of an interesting character, I think, really, because she, on one side, she is doing what Comstock wants. She rains fire down on New York. I mean, Comstock, we can assume, is long gone by that point, and she is fulfilling that prophecy by completing her mission. But at the same time, she is also the one trying to undo the work she has done by moving us around in time. So she's clearly a very kind of conflicted character, and it's a shame we don't get to spend. Kind of find out more about her. Really, we just have that little kind of glimpse. But maybe actually seeing more of her would be an overexposure, and she would kind of lose that kind of uniqueness. But she's certainly going to be a very, very messed up person, to an extent, I guess, in the way that Booker is, but for very different reasons. But let's rescue Elizabeth while we recover from the gratuitous cleavage shot of the game.
I'm gonna fix this. You ready?
Just do it. Help me with this.
I think someone meant for you to have this.
It's a clue.
Read it.
Your dream of New York happens. It's me. I'm the one who...
She's given us a way to get past Songbird. We're gonna find an airship and we'll leave
Booker.
Paris, Elizabeth. Remember, you wanted to go
We're
to...
not leaving. We are going to find Comstock.
Why?
You saw what he turns me into. I will not allow that.
And so what, you're going to kill him?
Is this where you start moralizing, Booker? You forget. I know you.
I'm not going to let you kill him.
Really? Booker? What are you going to do to stop me?
Not a damn thing. Because I'm gonna do it for you.
So both of our character arcs, both Elizabeth's and Booker's, take another step forward there, and I think it's really nice, the character arc of Elizabeth in this game, or Anna, I guess, in the way that she goes from this very, very happy, carefree girl dancing on the beach to someone that abhors violence and hates what's going on, to someone that becomes desperate not to go back and even asks us to kill.
How long?
Long enough.
And even asks her to kind of kill her to stop her being protected again, all the way now into this
He is not going to have long to use it.
all the way into this kind of vengeance-wanting, revenge-wanting heroine that we have now. Obviously, her character arc is not yet finished,
Help me out with this.
but she has indeed taken another darker step towards her eventual destiny, and to an extent, Booker has as well, because another gold bar there, because Booker, I think, now has completed his transition to, instead of being just in his mind, a mercenary that wants to just kind of sell her for money, and now into someone that wants to kind of protect her, and he doesn't need to kill Comstock in his own mind, but he chooses to because he cares for her. Now let's hear from our doctor.
The procedure should help immensely with the issues we've had with the girl. Once the device is implanted, any effort on her part to alter the state of things will emit a most painful electric shock. Pavlov made a dog salivate. We'll make this one weep.
Pavlov's dog is a very famous experiment that I'm sure most of you will have heard of. For those of you that haven't, simply it works along the lines of they had a group of dogs and they fed them every day. You know, I know, shocking. And every time they fed them, they rang a bell. And obviously, then while hearing the bell, the dogs then ate and, as one does, salivates and digests and all that kind of stuff. And then they discovered that if they then just rang the bell, after doing this for many days or weeks, I don't know how often, if they then just rang the bell, that the dogs...
Everything here is a cipher that I understand except for this symbol. It's a cage. Did she say anything about this?
No.
So they discovered if they just rang the bell, that the dogs would still salivate, because their brains had been kind of trained to expect that along with the bell came food, and their bodies reacted accordingly. Now, what they're suggesting with Elizabeth is that rather than through food but through pain, they train her not to open tears, or they train her to obey the will of Comstock. So the idea being, every time that she tries to go against that, or every time she tries to open a tear, her mind and her body then associate that with pain and suffering, and therefore they kind of train themselves out of it. Not very pleasant, rather disturbing, really, but that's why they deserve to be hit in the face with a tornado. Now, one last thing I would like to say about the scene that we saw with old Elizabeth is clearly we're seeing the destruction of New York.
It's the hand of the prophet. Comstock's flagship. I've got to find a way on board.
Stay here. I'll handle this.
We're doing this together, or I'm doing it alone. Either way, I need to know the thing's been done.
DeWitt, you struggle against prophecy like a stone loosed from a sling. How thrilling the launch, how breathtaking the apex, and how terrifying the descent as gravity drags you down into the inevitable.
One last thing that I would like to discuss about the scene with elderly Elizabeth when we look out over the burning New York is the fact that, of course, we have seen that scene before. Seen that scene? I like that phrase. We're almost right at the beginning of the game. I think it's the first time that we open up our office door. We get taken briefly to that point. Now, in a way, those two scenes are connected, because when we, according to the plotline, when we open that door in the past, that was to give away the child, Anna, to the male Lutece. By giving away the child, we therefore have started the route for the seed of the prophet sitting on the throne and drowning in flame the mountains of man. You know, that action that day is what allows that prediction to come true. So the reason why we see it when we open the door is because without that action, that could not happen. So it's the story kind of comes full circle. Then we were there at the point where that particular variable, that particular path or choice was put in place, and then we are there, or we see its conclusion all the way to the end. Very nice bit of storytelling. But as we're about to get attacked and battered by a huge amount of vox populi.
They're...
Look around you, Elizabeth. I built all of this for you. You are my air and my blood. And what has DeWitt ever done for you?
Here,
To
ammo!
him, you are now what you always were. A means to an end.
Throughout this, before I go on to talk about what I was going to talk about, throughout this whole series of dialogue that comes up, throughout this battle, and when we eventually meet Comstock, all of the dialogue that they throw there, it refers back to this story of Booker selling Elizabeth when she was young as a baby to get rid of his debts. It's all kind of foreshadowing. It's all kind of allowing us to kind of fit together the pieces and the clues. None of it's particularly explicit, but what Comstock repeatedly does is say that it is that we have betrayed her. It's we that we have treated her badly, not the other way around. And I guess to an extent, you know, he's got a point. I mean, he's doing it mainly to wind us up, but I don't think Booker's necessarily going to win any Parenting of the Year awards by selling his child to cover a debt, or, as Comstock says, using her as a means to an end. Now, we are obviously approaching the end of the game here slowly, but so I think it would be good for us to start talking about the ending of Bioshock, because clearly there's going to be tons for us to discuss with that end sequence. And as always, I am assuming that you have actually seen the end sequence and played the end sequence, so you know what I'm going to be referring to. But to be able to do that ending justice, I think it would be good if we started to discuss all of that stuff, a couple of videos in advance, to give us time to talk about it together, and for you to pass me any comments back so I can improve the discussion that go into the final few videos as well. So I'm not going to talk about everything, obviously, because some of it I'd like to talk about as it actually happens, but I would like to start talking about the lighthouses. That scene that comes up a couple of times, where we see an infinite number of lighthouses stretched across the sea and the horizon. Now, it's unclear whether that scene is supposed to be literal or symbolic, i.e. are they really there, or are they just a figment of imagination to an extent. What they represent is the important thing, because those lighthouses are the time where it really starts to represent the idea that there are infinite number of universes, hence Bioshock Infinite, that there are every single possibility is played out from universe to universe in terms of variables and constants. There is a universe for every single possible variable and derivative of that, and derivative variable of each other variable, if that makes sense. So, you know, there are many universes, some of which will be very, very similar through variables that have no real kind of long-lasting effect, but some universes, or many universes actually, will be drastically different from key variables, such as the one of Booker and Booker's Comstock's baptism. Now, the reason why I kind of say, well, is the place symbolic or literal, is because some people have suggested that this place is real. You know, all the universes are connected by lighthouses. Elizabeth herself says, I think it's her that always says, there's always a man, a city, and a lighthouse. So maybe the lighthouses themselves really are doors. But some people have suggested that actually the scene is there almost for the benefit of the player, or perhaps Elizabeth creates it for the benefit of Booker, to kind of just help him understand this idea of universes, and many universes all taking place simultaneously, because it's the place where he is allowed to see many Bookers and many Elizabeths all kind of running between the links between different universes to their destination. So it could just be like a symbolic visual way of kind of seeing the multi-universes all together, all in front of us, rather than a real place. On the other hand, if it is a real place, then it still works analogically. Analogically? I think that's a word. We'll go with it. Let's pretend it's a word as well. Now, in that process of taking us between the lighthouses, Booker and Elizabeth are kind of working together, or at least, you know, he's kind of working to try and stop this whole thing from happening. They've just, because obviously that she has the power over time by that point, they're going to try and stop Comstock from creating Columbia and all that. So the first place they go back to is to where Booker initially gives. I've got one more left, and I carefully missed. The first place they go back to is where Booker initially gives away Anna, gives away Elizabeth. But if you remember that scene, she says there is no option. This is not a variable. This is a constant. This cannot be changed. Once we get to this scene, once we get to this time, this bit cannot be stopped. So therefore, that isn't the point at which they can stop this whole thing from happening, the whole attack on New York from happening, because that is a constant, not a variable. So instead, they have to go back and look for a point which they can alter, which they can have an effect on. Now, those of you that have looked up my nickname online will know that the Adipose, as it comes from a series called Doctor Who, which I'm sure some of you or many of you will be familiar with. Doctor Who, being a time traveller, often talks about things that can be changed in time and things that can't, and the things that can't he refers to as fixed points in history. Now, using that kind of language or that kind of idea, Booker giving up the child is a fixed point.
My brother has presented me with an ultimatum. If we do not send the girl back from where we brought her, he and I must part. Where he sees an empty page, I see King Lear. But he is my brother, so I shall play my part, knowing it shall all end in tears.
King Lear is a Shakespearean tragedy. You can roughly divide up Shakespeare's plays into comedies, histories, tragedies, and probably something else as well. His tragedies were known for basically it all ending in tears, and whatever happened, it all basically normally ended up with everyone dying, or it all ending up very, very badly. Now, what she's talking about there, the female and the male Lutece, she's saying that the male Lutece sees this as sees the future as an empty page, saying is if they can sort this, if they can undo this, if they can stop Comstock, if they can stop Elizabeth, then everything will be fine, or everything will be unknown. Possibly with the better ending. However, she's saying that if we change this, if we modify this, then it isn't going to be an empty page, an unknown future. Money! Whoa, close up money that came from your ear. It's going to be a tragedy. It's going to be maybe not a disaster, but certainly it's all going to end in tears. And of course it does, because Bioshock has a sad ending, I guess. That Vox phone also helps to start filling in all the little gaps on the Lutesses. We've discussed their kind of character arcs before, but to remind us, the male Lutece is feeling a lot of regret for what is going on. He wants to sort it. She doesn't care. She's not really interested. But it's that ultimatum
Booker,
that makes the difference for her.
So that can take us to the hand of the Prophet.
She does care about him. She might not care about the destruction of New York, but she does care about her brother. And from him giving that ultimatum, help me or I'm leaving, brings her to action. And then that sets in this chain of events of which the whole game is based on, this idea that they go and fetch Ush Booker to try and undo the work that they and Comstock and others have done. Then proceed. So, to go back to our little discussion on the lighthouses, so they go back to where Booker's baby was being given away, but that's a constant, that can't be changed. As Anna says, she's foreseen it. There is no other option here once we get to this point. So instead, they need to go back and look for a variable that happened before this that will actually have an impact.
Do you think it's possible to redeem the kind of things that we've done?
Redeem? I don't see much use in that.
Booker, are you afraid of God?
No. But I'm afraid of you.
I'm just putting on my winter shield here, and we're about to have a bit of a battle, so a bit of invincibility while flying between these barges I think will be rather useful. Anyway, well, let's say hello. We've got a bit of dialogue there, which comes from the very beginning of the game, if you remember. That bit where she kind of says, are you afraid of God? No, but I'm afraid of you. In a sense, kind of implying that her powers are comparable to an extent, and we have talked about before whether she is omnipotent or just omniscient, or somewhere between the two. But I think we can probably argue that she is omnipresent, meaning that she is kind of everywhere all at once, because she seems to have knowledge of what has happened in all different universes at all different points, hence why she's able to join the dots together of what has actually happened in the past and the future. Because let's think about it, she wouldn't have existed at Booker and Comstock's baptism. She wasn't alive at that point, so she must have the ability to see the variables, to see the the constants and work out which ones need to be tweaked and which ones need to be changed. However, she may not have that ability yet at this point. That may come, in full when the siphon is eventually destroyed later in the game. But she's certainly getting stronger, and she ends up a very, very powerful creature that, in fact, Booker should be scared of. There's also a lovely bit of dialogue there talking about redemption. Now, we've mentioned redemption in a number of dialogues throughout this series, and drawn parallels with other games such as Red Dead Redemption and stuff like that. But it's interesting them to hear the words. They use the words explicitly. They use redeemed rather than redemption, but it's the same. It's the same source root, isn't it? And Elizabeth kind of challenging Booker to kind of say, well, do you think we can be redeemed of this? Do you think it's possible to forgive what we have done? Which is, of course, is the core idea in this game again, that idea that forgiveness and regret and pride and a feeling of vindication can all be kind of mixed together and produce some very kind of unexpected and dangerous results. And this guy really doesn't seem to be bothered about being punched in the face. Ow! But I am bothered about being hit with a rocket launcher, so please don't do that. Ah! Oh, right. I could do with some health, please. But no one seems to have them, so I shall return to Lizzie. Hello, Lizzie. Ah, there is some health. Oh, dear. Now, I am going to have a minor moan at the narrative or the game at this point. I think this scene is absolutely brilliant. Oh dear, he says, falling off. I think this scene is absolutely brilliant, this fighting on the airship and stuff, but it kind of feels a bit weird to me that we're kind of fighting the Vox. We're chasing Comstock, and yet we're fighting the Vox Populi, and even in the finale, as I'm sure you're aware, we get past Comstock and then we get attacked again by the Vox, and it kind of just feels. I don't know what you feel about this, and you do leave your ideas in your comments. But it kind of feels to me, but at this point, we should have got past the Vox. We should now be fighting Comstock and Comstock's men and Comstock soldiers. It's almost like we're kind of fighting two different battles at once, which I think makes the narrative feel a little bit muddy, and especially that last battle. And this one to an extent, actually, it's kind of like, oh yeah, we're going after Comstock. Oh no, but we're about to be attacked by someone else. It just feels a little bit forced, to the point that they kind of felt that the game should be difficult at this point. They felt that the game needed a battle at that point, so just kind of shoehorned in some of the bad guys from earlier. I don't know. Maybe I'm being unfair. Do tell me in the comment section if you think if you agree with my kind of criticism here. But I think this bit here would be far more effective if we had visions of Comstock around, chatting to us more. If we were fighting Comstock soldiers, maybe even having if these guys were in Comstock's uniform. I don't know. It would feel more like a finale versus Comstock, because as it is, it all feels not weak when we meet Comstock, but it feels very, very understated, almost like his power gave up a long time ago, and actually he did nothing to try and stop us from rescuing Elizabeth. He saw we were there, and he just kind of went, oh well, that's that then, and walked off, which doesn't really seem like the actions of a man so desperate to have a child and keep it that way that he would actually rip a hole in the fabric of the universe. Do you not agree? I think it's a little bit out of character. But then again, we do know that many things had to be changed in the plot line or in the end section because they ran out of development time and things like that. So maybe they thought about something different initially, but then because the timing had to kind of change it, the same like they did with the Boys of Silence, which we talked about last time. But to an extent, I guess it must be a deliberate choice as well, because in that final meeting with Comstock, he makes no effort to defend himself against us. There is no final fight with Comstock, and to an extent, although he talks to Elizabeth and tries to persuade her to change her mind, he more or less lets us do what we want. Now, there's loads more to talk about with that final battle with Comstock, or non-battle with Comstock, and we'll talk about those more when we get there. But for now, we are almost at our destination, and we are out of time. If you have enjoyed this bit of commentary, or you've got anything to say about the ideas I've raised, then please give the video a like and do get involved in the discussion below in the comments section. But either way, please do subscribe if you haven't yet joined me on TheAdiposeTV, and I will play this dialogue through in full at the beginning of the next video. So take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.